In 2021, in the city of Yichun, something quite extreme happened. Only 2,300 babies were born in that year, against nearly 9,000 deaths in a population of 850,000. This problem of fewer babies being born and more people dying is not limited to cities or towns that nobody has heard of outside China, but it's also happening in larger, well-known cities. Such imbalance may have been one of the legacies of the one-child policy. In the 36 years that the policy was enforced, around 400 million births were prevented. That is roughly the entire population of the United States and the UK combined, or almost the total population of South America. Yet behind these statistics, there's another even more complex issue that has shaped the Chinese society in many ways, one that is more visible in schools. We're talking about the skewed gender ratio, another unintended legacy of the one-child policy, combined with a traditional preference for male heirs in families, because a man is expected to provide for his parents in old age. Over the years, this imbalance has resulted in 41 million more men than women under the age of 60. That is more than the entire population of countries like Canada or Poland. This discrepancy is especially pronounced in the younger ages. For example, in the 15 to 19 age bracket, the ratio of males to females is 116 to 100. Which later in their life might result in problems for men not being able to find a partner because there are more men than women. Throughout history, the global birth rate per 1,000 people has been consistently falling. In 1963, for every 1,000 people, 36 babies were born. In 1993, there was a fall of 50% to 24 babies per 1,000. And by 2024, another 50% fall to roughly 16 babies per 1,000 people, or a birth rate ratio of 1.6%. In China, this number is well below the global average. It sits at around 0.8% or 8 babies per 1,000 people, which is similar to other aging populations like Spain or Italy. But the key difference in those countries is that migration helps offset the population decline. This challenge is even more pronounced in the city of Yichun. Here, only 7% of the population is under the age of 14. But in China as whole, it's 18%. Even in other countries with far worse demographics like South Korea or Japan, the situation is much better than China's smaller cities or rural communities. Until 2015, due to the one-child policy, if you had a second child, heavy penalties were imposed on the parents and ultimately on the child. However, there were some families who had a black child, or a hei haiti in Mandarin. These black children refer to the unregistered second or subsequent children born in defiance of this policy, who grew up without a legal identity in the shadows of their own country. Ai Ming was one of those black children. She was born into a rural family that already had one child. Her arrival posed a dilemma for her parents. The fines imposed for violating the one-child policy were exorbitant, far beyond what her family could reasonably afford. Determined to keep their daughter, her parents made the difficult decision to keep her existence a secret, not registering her birth with the authorities. For the first few years of her life, Ai Ming's lack of legal identity didn't seem to generate too many problems. However, as Ai Ming grew older, the implications of a lack of status became more problematic. The absence of a hukou, China's household registration system similar to the American Social Security number, meant that she was ineligible for public education, healthcare, and other essential services. To give Ai Ming a chance at a normal life, her parents managed to secure her a false identity. They were able to register her under the name of a deceased relative, a complex process that involved paying bribes and manipulating official documents. However, this precarious arrangement left her in perpetual fear of her secret being exposed, threatening the bit of normal life she had. Stories like Ai Ming's highlight the human cost of one of the wildest experiments in social control of a population in human history, the one-child policy. However, it wasn't always like this. Until the 1960s, China encouraged its citizens to have large families. They thought that population growth was equal to national strength. But by the 1970s, the government had concerns over the sustainability of that policy and tried to solve the issue. So, the government pulled together a group of mathematicians and engineers who had the task of calculating China's ideal population size, which they determined to be 700 million. They developed a linear model to achieve this through birth restrictions. Their approach completely overlooked the complexity of human society and family planning, as they did not consult experts or social scientists who could have highlighted the differences between engineering projects and the more complex dynamics of regulating family sizes. However, these scientists could not predict the changes within the Chinese society. Currently, the country's population is aging quickly, with projections showing that by 2050, up to 39% of the population will be over 60, a significant increase from the current 20%. This has led families to invest heavily in their single child, creating the 4-2-1 problem, which means that a single child ends up being responsible for caring for 2 parents and 4 grandparents. With enough evidence that things got a bit out of hand, the Chinese government took some measures to revert a reality where there were too many men, too many old people, and too few young people. First, in 2015, they adjusted the policy to allow families to have up to 2 children. Later in that year, they raised the limit to 3 children, and in July 2021, they removed all limits. A few months later, financial incentives were introduced to encourage families to have more children, like the city of Shaoxing, where families could receive up to $50,000 towards a home purchase. Fewer people in smaller cities like Yichun means a smaller workforce and less economic growth, and it also means a much smaller Communist Party. But the Communist Party is well aware that fewer babies, an aging population, and the acceleration of the depopulation in less developed regions is the new normal. Dealing with population decline involves less evident adjustments. Infrastructure, originally built to serve larger populations, may become underused or redundant. This can lead to excess capacity in public services like schools, hospitals, and transportation systems, and the maintenance costs of public services strain the government budgets. In this situation, the councils or local governments need to make investments to implement strategic downsizing or repurposing to match the reduced demand, like in the city of Yichun, where the local government has merged some urban districts and schools. But this depopulation is even expected to happen in larger industrial coastal cities, which will start losing workers as automation becomes more advanced and widespread. Adapting infrastructure can also mean enhancing accessibility and services for an aging population, including healthcare facilities and services more targeted to support the elderly. The future of cities like Yichun is highly dependent on how people react to policy changes, and this can be an example of how to manage decline in other parts of the world. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.